We are truly starting at the beginning. As you can see, I'm currently sitting at my desktop. Let's take and launch the Autocad 2008 application by double-clicking on the icon. When I do, Autocad brings up the splash screen. In just a second, it's going to bring the interface up on my screen. Now, I'm using a fresh install of Autocad, so my screen may look a little bit different than yours. If our screens are significantly different, what I'd like you to do is come up to the left-hand corner of the screen and click on this drop-down. This is our workspace toolbar. And you can see that I have several choices available. What I'd like you to do is set yours to Autocad Classic. Now our screen should look relatively similar. I thought before we got started with the videos, we'd take a quick trip around the interface and talk about some of the things that we see on our screen. The first thing I'm going to do before we get started is I'm going to turn some things off. I'm not going to be using this toolbar, so I'm going to come up and left-click on this X to remove it from the screen. I'm not going to be using this palette, so I'm going to come up and click on this X to turn him off. All right, the first area of the interface we're going to discuss is this large black area in the middle of the screen. This area is called Model Space, and this is our drafting board. The nice thing about Model Space is that it is infinite in size, and because of this, I don't have to worry about some of the things that used to concern us in the old days when we drafted with paper and pencil. You see, when we drafted on paper, we used to have to draw our geometry to a scale, such that it would fit within the confines of the sheet. Since Model Space is infinite in size, I can draft whatever I want, whether it be 5 inches or 5 miles, and I can draw it all at true size, or 1-to-1. If I look a little bit lower on my screen, I can see some tabs. Model Space is actually a tab. Now these tabs work the exact same way as they do in Microsoft Excel. If I'd like to flip from one tab to the other, all I have to do is click on the tab name. I'm going to click on Layout 1, and we can see that Layout 1 appears to be a sheet of paper. That's because it is a sheet of paper. Each one of these layout tabs represents a plottable sheet of paper that I can use when the time comes for me to print my drawing. Now we'll talk about these layout tabs later on when we get into plotting. For right now, I'd like to return to my drafting board, so I'm going to come down and click on my Model tab to return to Model Space. Model Space is where every great design takes shape. It's our virtual drafting board capable of handling our largest projects. As we work our way around the Autocad interface, let's take a minute and look at our toolbars. Now, if we look at our screen, we can see I've got a drawing on my drafting board already. This is an example of the type of work that we'll be doing in the near future. So at this point, we're going to configure our toolbars so that they're in the optimal position for us to be drafting. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, I have an example of a toolbar. Now, a toolbar is nothing more than a collection of Autocad icons. Each one of these icons represents a specific Autocad command. And I want you to notice that if I move my cursor over one of these icons, Autocad will pop up a tooltip and tell me what specific command that icon is going to launch. In addition to that tooltip, take a look at the lower left-hand corner of our screen. As I move over and hover on top of this icon, I can see some additional information that can be very helpful, especially for a beginner. Now, these toolbars do not have to stay put. I can move these wherever I like in my interface. I'm going to click and hold on this little toolbar handle, and I'm going to drag this guy into my drafting area and release. I've just converted that toolbar from a docked to a floating state. Now notice when the toolbar is in a floating state, I can see the name of the toolbar as well as a little X that I can use to turn this toolbar off. Let's try that. I'm going to come up and click on the X and turn off my draw toolbar. Now that we've turned the toolbar off, let's look at how we can turn toolbars on. If I'd like to turn a toolbar on, I can move my cursor and hover over an existing tool and right-click. And when I do, I see a listing of all of the toolbars that are available in Autocad. Now, some of these have checks next to them, and the check signifies that that toolbar is already visible on our screen. Now, we just turned off the draw toolbar. Let's turn them back on again. I'm going to click on the draw name, and that toolbar pops back up right where we left him. Now, this is a very important toolbar. This is the toolbar that we're going to use to create our geometry, so I want to keep this guy on my interface. I'm going to dock him to the left side of the screen. So I'm going to place my cursor on the blue area, and I'm going to click and hold. And as I drag this guy away, notice I'm dragging a little ghosted version with me. When I get my cursor close enough to the edge of the screen, we can see the shape change. That means the toolbar is ready to be docked. All I have to do is release my mouse button. That guy's now in a docked state. Now we have another toolbar that we're going to use frequently. Right now that guy's located on the right side of the screen. This is our Modify toolbar. Now since this guy is so important, I'm going to move him over so that he can sit alongside the Draw toolbar, just because it'll be easier to work, not having to go back and forth and span the entire width of my monitor to select my tools. So let's pull this guy away. I'm going to click and hold on the handle, drag him away, and I'm going to drag him to the left side of the screen. And as soon as I get close enough, the shape changes and I can release and dock that toolbar. Now, if I want it to be tidy, I can click and hold on the little handle and I can shift these guys up or down to fill up the columns. I've got one more change I want to make to my interface that has to do with this little toolbar right down here. I'm not going to be using him right now, and he's only got 4 icons and he's eating up an entire column of real estate. So let's turn him off. I'm going to click on the handle and drag him away, and watch when I release my mouse button, that column disappears. I now have a little bit more space that I can draft. And since this toolbar is not going to be used, I'm going to click on the X to turn him off. Toolbars give us the ability to customize our interface to our needs, and they give us convenient access to the commands we use most. Every AutoCAD instructor will tell you there's at least 3 ways to do everything in AutoCAD. Command entry is no exception. Let's take a look at the pull-down menus, yet another way to launch AutoCAD commands. Now, if we look at the top of the screen, we can see that we have several pull-down menus available to us. Now, if you're familiar with any Windows applications, some of these menus are probably familiar to you. I'm going to come over and click on the File pull-down. We'll open him up. Now, the commands and the options within the File pull-down, they relate to the AutoCAD drawing in its entirety. For instance, I can create a new drawing here, I can open a drawing, I can save or email my drawing, or I can plot my drawing. Let's take a look at the Edit pull-down. If I come up and hover over the Edit pull-down, here's where I have access to my typical Windows clipboard functions. My cut, my copy, my paste. Now I'm going to move outside the pull-down and I'm going to hit my Escape key to close that, because I want to show you the commands that we just talked about are also available right here at the top of our interface as toolbar icons. Once again, the pull-downs are just another way of launching the same AutoCAD commands. Let's take a look at the View pull-down. I'm going to come up and click on View to open this guy up. Now, we're not going to go through all of the pull-downs. I'm just going to give you an idea of how these things work. We'll go through some of the other ones as we progress through the videos. The View pull-down is where we can control how our drawing looks on our screen. Now, notice that some of these options have a little black triangle to the right that represents a flyout menu. If I hover over the option, AutoCAD will pop up the flyout. I get additional selections. Another thing we may see in a pull-down is an option with 3 dots. The dots mean that this particular option will bring up a dialog box. I'm going to click on this guy, and we can see there's the dialog box that's related to that option. I'm going to close this. Now remember, we talked about the importance of the Draw and the Modify toolbar. We also have a Draw and a Modify pull-down. I'm going to click on the Modify pull-down to open him up, and I want you to take a look at the list of commands that we have available. Also notice right next to the command name, there's a little icon. These happen to be the same icons and in the same order as what we have in our Modify toolbar. Once again, just another way to launch the commands. Probably the most important pull-down that we have is the Help pull-down. This is where we can go if we have a question or a problem. Now, the nice aspect about the Help feature in AutoCAD is that it's context sensitive. That means I can get help for a command that I'm currently using. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to come over and click on my Modify pull-down to open that up, and I'm going to come down and select the Mirror command. Now, I've just launched the Mirror command, and I have a question. One question might be, how do I use this? If I want that question answered, I can come up to my Help pull-down, and I can select Help. AutoCAD will pop up the Help dialog, giving me all the information that I need regarding that command. And as a bonus, AutoCAD will also tell me where this command is located in the other areas of my interface. For instance, the Mirror command is in the Modify toolbar, and it's also located in the Modify pull-down. Close this up, and I'm going to hit my Escape key to clear the Mirror command. Now, you may be asking yourself, what's the best way to work? Should I take and use toolbar, or should I use pull-downs? You can do whatever is most productive for you. Whichever way allows you to work best, that's the way you can work. Now, you may also be asking, that Help feature, that's kind of nice, is that also available as a toolbar icon? Yes, it is. It's right up here at the top of our interface. No matter how you access your commands, whether it be through the pull-down menus or the toolbars, it's nice to know that AutoCAD gives you the flexibility to work in a manner that makes you most productive. Another way to access and launch commands in AutoCAD is by using the command line. If we look at the bottom of the screen, the command line is located right down here. Now, the command line is considered old school AutoCAD. This is the way we entered our commands in the old days. The main drawback to using the command line today is that everything must be entered through the keyboard, so it involves a lot of typing. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to try and launch the line command. Now, if I want to launch a command through the command line, I can move my cursor right at the end of the command prompt and left click, and I'm going to type in LINE and hit enter. I have just launched the line command. Now, if we look at the command line, we can see AutoCAD is asking us to specify first point. The command line is where AutoCAD speaks to us. That's where AutoCAD tells us what it needs in order to complete the command. Now, I don't want to talk about the line command just yet, so I'm going to hit my escape key to cancel out. I'm going to enter one more command at the command line. You know, as archaic and cryptic as the command line is, it's still fairly intuitive. If I wanted to draft a circle, all I have to do is type circle and hit enter. I have just launched the circle command. Once again, AutoCAD is telling me what it needs to complete that command. I'm going to hit the escape key to cancel out of this command. Now, there are more efficient ways to launch commands nowadays. For the course of these videos, we're going to be using the toolbars and the pull downs. And I don't want to lie to you, Autodesk is in the process of phasing the command line out. It's still with us today, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be around forever. Because if you ask yourself, how many other applications utilize a command line? Well, none. AutoCAD is pretty much it. There are ways in AutoCAD 2008 to turn the command line off, but for the purpose of our videos, we're going to keep the command line on our screen. We won't be using it for entering our commands, but we will refer to it frequently to keep an eye on what AutoCAD needs. Probably the most versatile tools we have in our interface are palettes. Palettes give us quick access to drawing content, properties, and commands. Let's look at how we can apply them to our workspace. Now, if I look up at the top of the screen, I have several icons right up here. These icons represent palettes. Now, a palette is like a dialog box of features. It's something that's important enough you might want to keep it on your screen for a long period of time. And if you're a pull-down user, we can also access those same palettes right here in the Tools pull-down. If I go to the Palettes flyout, this is a listing of all of the palettes available in AutoCAD. Let's bring one up on our screen. I'm going to click on the Properties palette. He pops up right in the middle of my screen, and this guy is used to change the properties of our existing entities. So the first thing we notice is this guy is huge. Autodesk recognizes that these palettes are quite large and they can be unwieldy when we're trying to draft, so they give us the ability to change their size. If I want to change the size of this palette, I'm going to move my cursor down to this chamfered corner, and when I get right over the chamfer, my icon will change. At this point, if I click and hold, I can drag my cursor and I can change the width or the height of this palette. Now, I don't have to leave the palette in the middle of my screen. I can move them wherever I like. If I'd like to move this palette, I'm going to move my cursor over the mast, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag this guy to the left side of my screen. And as I get close to my toolbars, he just kind of snaps right into position, just like a magnet. Now that my palette is on the side of my interface, it is still taking up a lot of real estate. I'm going to make my palette collapsible, and I can do that by coming down and clicking on my Auto Hide icon. If I do that, the palette collapses down to just the width of the mast. This means I get as much screen real estate as possible to do my drafting. If I wish to use my palette at this point, all I have to do is hover over the mast, the palette will open up, and I can take and click and do my changes, do whatever business I have to, and if I move off of the palette, it will return to the collapsed state. If I need the palette to stay open for any length of time, I'm going to come down and click on the Auto Hide button once again, and that will lock the palette open. Now, the way I prefer to use palettes is to anchor them. If we'd like to anchor the palette, we can right-click on the mast, and in the menu I can select Anchor Left or Anchor Right. Which side of the screen would I like to anchor this palette to? I'm going to select Anchor Left, and that takes and shoves the palette all the way over to the far side of my interface. And you'll find that it works the same. If I hover over this column, the palette opens up. If I move away, the palette closes. I can take it one extra step. If I right-click on this column, I can select Icons Only. Let me pull away to close the palette. I truly have the best of both worlds. I've got a tremendous palette, and it's only taking up the same amount of space as a single toolbar icon. This means if I want access to this palette, I just have to move up over this icon, hover, he's available. I can move away and he closes. If the time comes when I'd like him to be on my screen for a significant period of time, once again, I can hover over so he opens. I can come down and click my Auto Hide button. He will remain on my interface as long as I need him. If I want him to go back to the anchored state, I'm going to come over and click on my Minimize button to collapse him back down to the toolbar icon. Palettes are the most versatile tool in our interface. They combine the functionality of a dialog box with the flexibility of a toolbar. The area at the very bottom of our interface is reserved for our status bar. The status bar provides us with information about the current state of our drawing, our interface, and our mode settings. Now, our status bar is located right down here. And if we look at the left-hand corner, I can see some numbers. These numbers actually represent the current location of our cursor. Notice as I move my cursor around in model space, those numbers change. Now, those numbers are actually called coordinates, and we'll talk about coordinates in a future session. Moving to the right of the coordinates, I can see that I have a row of buttons. Now, each one of these buttons represents a mode setting, and we'll talk about the various mode settings as we progress through the title. For right now, I want you to know that each one of these buttons is a toggle, meaning if I click on it once, I turn it on. If I click on it again, I turn it off. I'm going to click on the ortho mode. Let me click on this guy once. Notice he drops down to show that he's in the on state. Any button that is up is in the off state. Now, what I'd like you to do right now, I'm going to go through and turn all of my modes off. Once again, as we get to these, we'll talk about them fully, but for right now, I'm going to pop all of these buttons up with the exception of model. Be careful of model. I'm going to show you why. Let me click on model. Yeah, that could be scary if you're just using the program. Hey, my screen looks different. What this actually did was it popped us out onto a layout tab. And if you think you're going to return by clicking on this again, unfortunately, you don't. So be careful of that guy. If we want to go back to our drafting board, or if we want to return to model space, we have to come up and click on our model tab. So for right now, go through and pop up all of your mode settings, and we'll get into those in the future sessions. If I move to the far right of my screen, I can see I've got a little padlock. This padlock allows me to lock my interface. This prevents me from making accidental changes, moving things around on my screen. Let me show you how it works. Right now, it's in the unlocked state. I'm going to click the padlock, and then I'm going to come up to the All option, and I'm going to select Locked. And when I do, watch the little handles on the toolbars. When I click Locked, the little handles disappear. That means that I can no longer drag these guys away. I can't accidentally modify my interface. I'm going to unlock those. I'm going to come down once again and click the padlock, select All, and I'm going to select Unlocked. One more feature on the status bar I'd like to talk about is the Clean Screen option. All the way down in the far right corner, I've got this little blue square. This guy represents Clean Screen. If you use a laptop or if you use a machine with a small monitor, this guy can be very helpful. I'm going to click Clean Screen, and notice that Autocad eliminates almost 100% of our interface to give us the most real estate for our drafting. If I want to bring back my toolbars and my interface, I'm just going to come back and click on Clean Screen once again to turn it off. So if we need information about the current state of our interface, our mode settings, or even the location of our cursor, we only need to look to the bottom of our screen and view our status bar. I'm sure all of us understand the concept of a workbench. No matter what project you may be working on, a good workbench will have all of your tools within easy reach. AutoCAD allows us to do the same thing with our interface. By setting up a workspace, we can have all of the relevant tools available to accommodate whatever type of work we may be doing. Now, I've set up my screen the way I like it, the way that's most productive for me. I've organized my toolbars where I like and my palettes. I'd like to save this interface as a workspace, such that if I want to return to it in the future, all I have to do is restore my workspace. To do that, I'm going to come up to this pull down in my workspace toolbar, and I'm going to click on the drop down, and I'm going to select Save Current As. This will allow me to save the workspace. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it My Custom Workspace. And I'll click Save. I have just saved my interface if I ever want to return to it. Imagine all the different types of drafting that we can do with AutoCAD. We can do two-dimensional drafting, which will require certain toolbars and palettes. We can do three-dimensional drafting, which will require different toolbars and palettes. You may have a day that you spend entirely doing dimensions. Dimensions will require another set of toolbars. Imagine if you had a workspace set up for each type of work that you do. That way, when the time comes, rather than having to redo your interface, you just have to load a pre-saved workspace. When AutoCAD is installed, it already contains some predefined workspaces. Let's look at those. I'm going to click the drop-down, and AutoCAD gives us a workspace called 2D Drafting and Annotation. I will left-click on that to bring it up on the screen. This is an example of a saved workspace. Let's look at another one. I'm going to click the drop-down, and I'm going to select 3D Modeling. Once again, different toolbars, different palettes. This one is set up for three-dimensional modeling. Now, you don't have to use the ones that come with AutoCAD. You can set your interface up the way you like it and create your own. Let's restore the custom workspace that we just created. I'm going to go to the drop-down and select My Custom Workspace, and the screen goes right back the way it was. By setting up custom workspaces, you can always have your tools within easy reach, no matter what you may be drafting. AutoCAD is a very customizable program. The amount of flexibility we have can easily be seen in the sheer number of available user preferences. Let's take a look at where we can go when we want to change the way AutoCAD behaves. I'd like to make some changes to the way my AutoCAD is functioning. One thing I'd like to change is I'd like to remove these scroll bars. I really don't need these anymore. I'd also like to change this highlight feature. Notice as I move over this geometry, even if I don't have a command running, these things are kind of flashing and popping up on my screen, almost like a light show. Let's take and make some changes to our settings. If I want to do that, I can come up to my Tools pull down, and I can come all the way to the bottom of the menu and select Options. This is where we change the user preferences in Autocad. Now, notice that our options are segregated into tabs. And as I click on these tabs, we can see there are an astronomical number of settings that we can change in AutoCAD. Now, we're certainly not going to go through all of them. What I'm going to do first is show you how you can get information about what each of these options does. If I come up to the upper right-hand corner of the options dialog, notice I've got a little question mark button. This represents a help feature. If I click on this button, AutoCAD puts the question mark on my cursor, and then I can come over and left-click on the option of my choice, and AutoCAD will tell me what that option does. Let me hit Escape to clear the help information. And let's change some settings. I'm going to go to my Display tab first. And in the array of settings on this tab, notice that they're arranged in groups with a heading. I'm going to go to the Window Elements heading, and I'm going to come down to Display Scroll Bars in Drawing Window. Now, like I said, the scroll bars aren't very important anymore. There are better ways to manipulate our view on the screen, so I'm going to turn these off. I can do that by clicking on this checkbox to remove the display. Now I'm going to come down and click my Apply button. And when I do, watch those scroll bars on the side of my screen. Notice AutoCAD takes them away. The next place I'd like to go is my Selection tab. I'm going to come up and click on the Selection tab. And let's address that issue with the highlighting of our entities. I'm going to go to my Selection Preview area, and I'm going to take the checkbox out of when no command is active. This means that when I move my cursor over an entity, it's not going to take and highlight on my screen. I want to do one more thing. Let's click the Visual Effects Settings button, and this controls how the entities are going to highlight. Right now it's set for both, which means it's going to be both dashed and thickened when it highlights. I'm going to set this for Thicken Only. This means when I'm in a command and I move over an entity, it's just going to get a little bit thicker on my screen to give me an idea of what I'm selecting. Let me click OK. One more essential setting I want to make is I want to go to our User Preferences tab, and I'm going to go to my right-click customization button. This is where we control the right-click functionality of our mouse. I'm going to select this button, and when the right-click customization dialog comes up, I want to ensure that we are both using the same settings. So I want to make sure that we're both set to Shortcut Menu, Shortcut Menu, Shortcut Menu. That means that every time we right-click, AutoCAD is going to bring up a context-sensitive menu and not do something else. This way we're both using the same settings. You'll be able to do the same things I do throughout this title. I'm going to click Apply and Close, and then I'm going to click OK to dismiss the Options dialog. At first glance, the Options dialog box may seem a little intimidating. However, as you continue to use the software, you'll begin to recognize the relationship between the commands, the interface, and the user preferences. Soon, changing your settings will become second nature.